Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alexa and Friends. My name is Jeff Blankenburg, and today I have one of our Alexa champions, Maaike Coppens, here with us. Maaike, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Certainly. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So we have lots and lots to cover today, but as I start all of these interviews with, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you that might give people a little insight into who you are or how you make decisions or how you think a little. So my first question for you relates to superpowers. And the thing that I'd like to know is among all the superpowers you've ever seen, or maybe you have one you would like to make up, is there one that you would specifically pick for yourself? And if there is, I'm assuming there is, what is that and why?
So, good question, Jeff. And superpowers are kind of my favorite thing to think about. I see you have loads of Funk Pops behind you, and some of them are Marvel related, and so I'm a very big Marvel fan as well, and so superpowers is something I'm deeply interested in. But having one for myself, I would say speed. I think going fast is probably something that I'd love to do more of. So especially in my job, for example, there's always things that I feel like I'd like to do more of or do quicker. And even in my personal life, I think going quicker and on the things that kind of are routines and that need to go quick, and then be able to gain back that time to spend more quality time with the people I love. That would absolutely be my favorite superpower.
I love that. I have a couple of thoughts on this. So I had someone a while back. They said that they wouldn't pick flying because flying at low speeds wouldn't be very fun, but flying at high speeds would probably require a second superpower, which would be like, you know, the ability to resist friction and stuff like that, so that your skin doesn't just fall off your body. And I would think with speed too. When you initially said this, I thought you meant like the Flash or somebody like that can go very, very fast running. But what you're describing is actually much more about almost like thought speed. You want to be able to just instantly have and make decisions and think through things, not necessarily physically move your body faster, right?
Yeah, and I think that is exactly what I mean. It's like thought speed, because I'll be honest with you, Jeff, body speed would be a big problem. I get lost in a handkerchief. So if I had flying or flash capabilities, I would probably get lost a lot. Sure. So all the time gain would be lost again.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, that's good to know. So Maaike gets lost frequently. We'll have to remember that in the future. I'll make sure to give you specific directions if we ever have a chance to meet up in person.
Yeah, do that. I like navigational direction in car is definitely one of my favorite feats.
All right. Well, speaking of directions, that leads me to my second question, which relates to getting to a restaurant to meet some friends. So I want you to imagine you're walking through a large city, and you need to get from where you are currently to a restaurant where you're meeting some friends. And of course, this is a large city block, so you can't really go around, or you can go around, but it'll be quite a walk. But you do see that there's an alley that you can cut through. And the alley's well lit. It looks very safe. There's nothing to suggest that it would be dangerous. So you walk down this alley, and as you get about halfway to your destination, you notice that at the end you're heading towards emerges a giant horse-sized duck, very large duck. It doesn't look terribly friendly, and as any good human instinct will lead you, you turn around and start going the other direction, because that's no thank you. Only to find that end has been closed by 100 duck-sized horses. Bunch of tiny horses. And a lot of them, 100. So you're now more or less trapped in this alley. You have one direction or the other to go. And I'd love for you to explain kind of which direction you're going to go and why.
So these horses, are they also unfriendly, or do they look like the friendly kind?
I don't know that horses are ever terribly friendly.
They are. Oh my God, horses are terribly friendly. I used to go horseback riding when I was little, and I literally like slept in my horse's stable. So
my goodness.
Yeah, so horses are friendly creatures if you don't upset them.
Okay. Well, these horses have been upset.
Okay. You're not making it easier on me.
I know.
But obviously, like, as this is a bit of a hypothesis, and duck-sized horses and horse-sized ducks don't really exist. I'm guessing that in this world, I can also be a witch with a magic wand, and I'll make them disappear, and poof, off they go.
Ooh, I wish I could allow you to have that power, but unfortunately, no. I will allow you to have the superpower you picked, which means you can think quickly.
Yeah.
But that's it.
That's it. Oh, but I mean, this horse-sized duck is obviously very upset because, imagine yourself, you're a duck sitting in a pond, nice and quiet. You go to sleep, you wake up, suddenly you're the size of a horse.
Yeah.
You don't fit in your pond anymore. You can't even pick up the little breadcrumbs, right? That are beneath you. So you're desperately hungry. And you see this person, Maaike, in front of you, and think, that looks like a good snack. But I think I'll take my chances with the duck-sized horses, and I always have like something sugary in my bag most of the time.
Oh, all right.
Because I'm a very I like candy and cookies and all of those things. So as I move towards those horse-sized duck-sized horses, I'll sprinkle some like sugary things around, which will keep them busy and allow me to escape.
That's perfect. I'll allow that. I think that sounds good. I also, you've never given me, no one's ever given me an opportunity to think about the psychology of the large duck. And I would have to imagine it's probably pretty lonely. There probably aren't many other large ducks like it around. In my neighborhood where I live here, we have a bunch of Canadian geese, but we have one regular white goose that hangs out with them. And he's lived in our neighborhood for years and just hangs out. It's just this one white goose. We named him Dave. And a bunch of other different geese, Canadian geese, that hang out around him. And we always wonder if his life is a little different. He seems to be the protector of the group, of the flock. Even when they have to like cross streets and stuff, he'll be the one out in the middle of the street, kind of like staring cars down while the other ones kind of cross by. It's very interesting. So I would imagine his life is very similar to Dave's, the giant duck.
I'm now like picturing Dave the brave duck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I have one more follow-up question. You said that you love candies and cookie and stuff like that. So we haven't actually established this, but where are you based?
In the south of France.
South of France. Very good.
Yeah.
And if you could recommend your favorite cookie or candy, maybe that's a local thing, but even if it's something that's globally known, what is your favorite thing?
I have a lot of favorite things because I am a sweet tooth. But so a very typical French thing called macarons.
Oh yeah.
Which are these? They are just so delicious.
Right,
and
they're little cookies with a little bit of
little cookies with a little kind of frosting inside, and they're just delicious. And they come in like lots of flavors, like pistachio.
Those are my wife's.
Strawberry, raspberry. Definitely one of my favorite things. And another one of my favorite things, which is not really a cookie, is stracciatella ice cream.
Okay.
With salted caramel on it.
You're saying all my words. I like that. Well, if we can ever get you to Seattle, there is a fantastic macaron place in just right outside of our office, and it's wonderful. They always have 15 or 20 different flavors, and they're amazing. Every time I go to Seattle, I bring some home for my wife, so highly recommend it.
Oh, yeah. Now I want to come to Seattle. Yeah. Although I probably can get very good macarons not so far away in the bakery, but still.
I would imagine that is accurate. All right, so I'd like to dive in now to kind of who you are, where you've come from, what your background story is. And I oftentimes when we talk with our friends or when we talk with recruiters, they kind of want to know your backstory. And all of us professionals, for the most part, have kind of that 5-minute story. Well, I got started here, and then I worked at this place, and then I did this thing. I made these decisions. I got promoted here, whatever. I'd love to hear your story.
5 minutes is going to be tough, no. But I'll try.
If it's 10, I'll take 10. I'd love to hear the whole story. Starting with where you grew up, where you went to school, all that stuff.
Yeah. So today I'm a chief design officer at OpenDialog, which is a conversational experience platform. But actually, my journey towards where I am now started way back when. So I have background in linguistics, and that also started way back when. So I remember when when I grew up, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's, and so I did a lot of reading. I loved books, but my favorite thing, and I know this is going to sound super weird, but my favorite thing was trying to guess or think about where words came from.
Oh,
And kind of I'd look at objects around room and see something like a clock or something like a spoon or anything, and then think about the word and its meaning, and how did that relate to that object, and how did people come up with this word, and why was it this word and not another one, and kind of
right.
breaking it up into kind of morphemes and phonemes. And I know this sounds super weird, but
No, I
to
don't think
do
it's
as a child, but
I
like
think
that was
everybody
one of
plays
my
those kinds of
favorite
little
things to do.
plays those kind of little games in their heads with all sorts of things. I had a small desk in my bedroom when I was a kid, and I was it's probably like 8 or 9 years old when I was doing a lot of this, but I was very into the idea of physics. And so what I was doing, without having, like, today kids just buy sets to do this stuff, but I was building these big elaborate marble runs where you could, like, it would roll down the crease of the desk and then across a pencil, and like just, I'd tilt things on angles just to make it so it could roll some more. And I found that I was just always super interested in how that stuff worked and how to play with physics. So no, I think kids all have their own little things that they get into. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I was definitely into words, and that kind of grew with the years. So instead of going to Scouts camp, I went to language camps during the
oh,
summer, learning new languages. Yeah, I've always been a language geek, and that just continued on through my kind of years at university. And so I studied literature and linguistics.
and
And
have you always been in France?
I have not always been in France.
All right.
I lived in Belgium for the first 18 years of my life. I traveled a lot during summer with these language camps, obviously, and spent time in the UK. I spent time in Germany, France. But I didn't live in the south of France, but I always had a big heart for the French language. But language set aside, a couple of years ago, well, I say a couple, but it's actually a lot more now. Time flies. I met my husband at his mom's B&B where I was staying as a vacationer.
Wow.
And he was on the other side of the pool. I had one look at him. I told my mom, a guy cute like that, I will never be able to get. And long story short, we've been married for over 10 years now. We
Oh
have
my
a cute
goodness.
little daughter, and summer loving turned into love of my life. So
That's amazing. What a great story.
yeah, well, we think about it often, and I'm happy when I get to tell it. My husband is like, oh yes, there she goes. She's going to tell the story again.
No, but I think it's always neat that all of us that are in any kind of relationship, there was a series of decisions that had to be made in order for that chance meeting to happen. And yours is a little less likely than others, right? Just happened to be on a vacation. But I mean, if I hadn't made a bunch of decisions in my college career that led me to a specific dorm room at a specific time, I would have never met my wife either. So yeah, that's it's amazing to think about all the little decisions we make in our lives and how they lead to where we are today.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? My journey with voice was kind of like that as well. Um, so after my background in kind of linguistics, I decided to look more into UX. So because computers I have a very personal story with computers related to my grandma again.
Tell it. I love these stories.
So when computers were still this thing that you needed to put a floppy disk in, so that tells you how old I am. And no one really had them in their houses yet, or not a lot of people at least. I was very passionate about this new thing and this new technology and what it could do, and it seemed so mysterious to me. And you could learn languages on it,
Right.
which was one of the most interesting features for me. And my grandma told me, like, if I'm still alive when you have your 12th birthday, I'll buy you a computer for your home. And unfortunately, she passed away before that age, but she left me money in her will, specifically telling my parents this is to buy Maaike a computer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I think that passion for computers kind of stayed with me as well, and kind of experiences and how it could all work. Because in that time when you wanted a computer program or your computer to do something, you had the command line and you had to call upon this wonderful friend named Edit to do something.
Yep.
Anyway, long story short, I also kind of dove further into UX design. When I kind of was looking at what careers do I really want to kind of explore more of, and then conversational AI came to be, and ta-da, like the perfect match between my two passions.
Right.
Language, writing, UX design, all of that mixed together is like, this is where I need to be. This is the space that I need to explore. And then two things happened, like two things that influenced my decision. One, I went to this meetup with loads of entrepreneurs, and there was a developer there, and he told me, oh, well, you're a UX designer, you'll soon be out of a job. And I was like, why will I soon be out of a job? He said, you know, with conversational AI, everything's going to be automatic. We'll be talking to computers, and everything that is AI really is just the thing that developers are going to be doing, and you don't need to kind of build or design screens anymore. And for him, it was really related to screens and just screens and UI and all of that.
Yeah.
So that in my mind was like, no, I'm not agreeing with this. I want to make sure that people don't think that it's just build this thing and everything will be all right. So that kind of got me a little angry. It's like when people tell me you can't do this or this will not work, I'm the kind of fighter person that goes, well, right. You'll see.
Right, I'll prove you wrong.
I'm going to make it, like I'm going to make it work. And then I think in the same week or like barely a few weeks later, I saw a talk by Philip Hunter, who at the time was head of design for Alexa. And he talked about user experience and Alexa. And it was this kind of very inspiring talk. And the way he talked about it kind of lit that spark that had already kind of been lingering there. And it's like, okay, well, I'm now going to go all in on voice and conversational AI, and I'm going to specialize in that field. And I have been doing nothing else ever since. I consulted with kind of loads of companies, startups, agencies, like for these last couple of years. And then I ended up consulting with Green Shoot Labs, which is an agency based in the United Kingdom. And the team was just so amazing that I thought, I have found my forever work home. I now want to stay with these people because they're an amazing team.
Right. And here we are.
And here we are. And so to continue on that story is that the Green Shoot Labs team had kind of this framework for designing conversations. And I had consulted with loads of companies and startups and agencies. And I had always had this kind of moment where, as a conversation designer, you want to make something happen. Right. You know that you want your Alexa skill to be an experience that does these kind of things, that allows users to accomplish these kinds of goals. And then there's always this tinkering moment where you ask, like, can I make this help intent contextual for each intent? Can I make this no match contextual? Can I have different flows under different conditions? And there's always a moment where it's, oh, I'm sorry, like that's not going to be possible right now with the technology, or we can't make that work. And that was very frustrating to me. And obviously, like, design is also taking into account constraints and so on and so forth. But you might have understood by now that I always want to kind of push things a bit further. And so when the GSL people kind of introduced me to their framework, which is OpenDialog, I was like, wow, this allows me to do all of these context-rich things.
Right.
Do great dialogue management and kind of lean on the context a lot more than on the actual intents and the NLU, and that just made me so happy. So I decided to stick around. That's long story, not so short.
No. I love a long story. So OpenDialog is the thing that you're working on today, right?
Yeah.
So I guess give me some context on, you've given a little, but give me kind of the bigger picture at what OpenDialog is and kind of what you're excited about as you think about where it's headed.
So OpenDialog, as I said, is kind of a conversational experience platform. So that's a big word and could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? And there are a lot of platforms out there. But to me, what OpenDialog really does really well is put the conversation designer front and center as an expert, as someone who understands the context, who understands the content, and is then able to model that into a conversational model that makes sense with kind of an overall high-level scenario, as in, this is the use case that you want to accomplish. This is what I want my Alexa skill to do overall, like you would have in your Alexa skill description, right? It's just as simple as that. But then it kind of takes it away and says, okay, well, within that, rather than as kind of normal design, and is that the thing, normal design, as UX UI design kind of thinks about what are jobs to be done, OpenDialog reasons in terms of conversations to be had. And then within those conversations, you have your components that are kind of scenes and turns and intents. But it's really about setting up your model and designing your model and setting up an information architecture, a bit like a closet, in which you then hang your hang your intents, you hang your clothes, whatever, and then you can compose whichever kind of mix and match, whichever makes sense for that day to wear.
I like that. I think that's an interesting way to describe it. Now, I know you shared a video with me. Would now be the right time to kind of show folks?
Let's do it, and it has a little exclusive in the end, Jeff, which we haven't.
Very good. All right, I'm gonna. This will be a very quick video, but you guys can check out what OpenDialog looks like here. Awesome. Yeah, I had obviously a chance to watch that video before we showed it here today, and it looks like a really intriguing interface. I saw testing tools. I saw the ability to kind of create and define my dialogue paths. I think it's pretty exciting what you guys are working on.
Thank you, Jeff. And as you saw at the end of the video, we're kind of now knee deep into kind of integrating with Alexa to allow conversation designers to also create context-rich and sophisticated Alexa skills. So
yeah, I think this is an exciting time as we see people building these kinds of tools and technologies. I know that the integration with Alexa is often one of the most challenging pieces to make sure that it works directly with our platform and lets people publish and do all those things. And it's exciting that you guys are working on this. Did I see at the end that you guys are announcing it'll be available here soon?
Yeah, exactly. It's coming really, really soon. So as I am kind of chief design officer, we're really knee deep into kind of designing the front end and making sure that people and conversation designers that are kind of seasoned, but also just are getting into voice, can easily set up their messages. And I think also play around with things like SSML, which is always kind of the fun part of building an Alexa skill and making sure that they can easily deploy it out. And then our technical team is looking into exactly what you're saying, that integration, making sure it all works seamlessly. And they're doing an amazing job. It's an amazing team.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I have so much more to talk to you about, but before we get too far away from this, and trying not to sound too much like a commercial, you said it's coming soon. Is there a good place for people to find out when it goes live, when it's available?
Yeah, so we are obviously on all the socials, and we share a lot. And we share, like, we believe in doing things out loud as much as we can. And I know, Jeff, you do that too with your kind of videos when you're building Alexa skills. And we're kind of building on the same principle, as in we're sharing our journey as we go. We do days in the life of, and then
That's cool.
and we share obviously when we do new releases. And we do new releases all the time. So there is going to be pieces that are coming out little by little. But the best thing to do is kind of sign up for OpenDialog, and then you can just see it roll out. And you can see the link. I think you're putting it down below. It's with opendialog.ai/signup. And you can be part of our Slack community as well. So that way you can kind of stay in the know and get in touch with us directly and ask all of your questions.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm very interested to see kind of where you guys head from here, and hopefully some of our audience will be excited to give those tools a try. So what are some of the specific use cases that you're working on related to Alexa?
So specific use cases, what you mean? For the Alexa skills in and of itself, or
well,
with
no, I know
Dialog?
that as we've talked about OpenDialog and some of the things that you're specifically interested in, I know when you and I met previously, we were talking about things like mental health issues, anxiety, depression. Are there any specifics there that you've had a focus on or had any?
Yeah, so on a more personal note, I would say, and obviously I use OpenDialog to do this. Is I am kind of very interested in exploring a few use cases for Alexa skills that are related to helping users cope with mental health issues like depression or anxiety in their day-to-day. Because I think that is really important. It's really challenging as well, right? Because mental health is this scary beast.
It is.
It's scary for the person that is experiencing it, one, but it's also scary for the people around them. And it's also scary even for designers, developers, and anyone in tech, because there's this risk, right? You have an immediate influence, an immediate impact on people's lives, with anything that has related with health, but even more so with mental health.
Agreed.
And so
I actually have a degree in psychology, and so I've spent a lot of time thinking about these kinds of things. And I think you're right. I think scary is the right word in many cases, but I think it's just one of those things that so few of us really understand, and it can affect so many people in so many different ways. I think about some of my close friends, right, that just have massive anxiety about things and how that can control their lives. But then from the outside looking in, as you talk to those folks, they seem fine. They seem normal. They present as if everything's okay. But inside, it's much like that duck's feet under a water, right? To go back to some ducks that are just constantly paddling, focused on all of the things that are going on. It's I agree. Any kind of technology that can help with that stuff is a big move in the right direction.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's little things, right? It doesn't have to be this huge diagnose your anxiety use case, or because that are things that are best left to the professionals that know how to do it. But it can be the little things like reminders for meditation, or things like, I'm now having an anxiety attack, and can you give me some like immediate things that I could do, immediate activities that could help me out right now, right here. And then that will allow me to like pass this little moment or big moment, and move on. It doesn't have to be overwhelming as a use case. I think if you do enough user research, if you ask professionals for help, we could build great small Alexa skills that just make a huge difference.
Agreed. I think we as developers sometimes try to take on the biggest problems. And oftentimes those little solutions provide so much value that the big problems are almost impossible to solve on their own. But if we slowly chip them away and build these smaller services and software to help, can make a big difference. I think that's a great perspective.
Yeah, and like it's the simple things, right? Like things like, for example, Find My Thing, which was announced at Alexa Live. I found that amazing. Like
Right.
it's a small thing, right? It's not this huge use case. It just helps people find things. But I cannot tell you, for someone who gets lost in a handkerchief and also loses everything on a daily basis, that is life changing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, so let's dive into voice, because this is one of the things that I'm most excited to talk to you about, is kind of what the industry looks like, what the state of the technology is. So I guess my first big question for you is, what is the state of voice these days? Being someone that has, since she was a little girl, thought about linguistics and voice, where are we? How do things look to you?
So before kind of saying where we are today, I always like the stories of the past. And when I look back kind of a few years ago, like just a few years ago, really, voice was already in this emerging place. And I think where we are now is amazing, because we have made so much progress. Like I remember I was one of the beta testers for the Echo in France. So when Alexa first came out in France, and the experience was interesting, but not mind blowing. It was not like wow, this is now going to change my life. And obviously I was a very enthused buyer, because I was already working with Alexa skills. I was working alongside Tom Hewitson from LabWorks, who does amazing game skills. So I was biased and I really wanted this to be good. And I was like, okay, like I see the potential, but there's just so many things not working yet, from it not clearly understanding the French language because it was still learning, obviously.
Right.
To the actual experiences in and of themselves. So I remember a radio skill, for example, when I asked for the news, instead of getting kind of this concise, on the spur flash briefing, I just got this kind of entire play out of the entire half an hour of news. It was like, this is like, I just want to pass by and ask for a little kind of quick thing, and like, why are you still talking at me? But things have moved on from there. So I think it's really astonishing how much progress we've made, kind of both from an understanding perspective, both from like the capabilities of Alexa itself, but then also from the way people and companies think about voice technology and how they can use it and how they can leverage it. And I think that in and of itself is already a feat, because for the last couple of years, like each year, there is someone that tells you 2019 is going to be the year of voice. 2020 is going to be the year of voice. Like it has been the year of voice for many years. But I think that finally, perhaps 2021, I feel like there is more knowledge now about it. We are reaching a critical mass of people, of professionals that are interested in it as well. Like we get more and more conversation designers, more and more skill developers, more and more third-party skills in the different locales as well for Alexa. Like it's just moving in the right direction. I remember when I just started out, there were like 5 conversation designers in the whole of France, which was kind of, we could hold it, you could count it on your hands. That was it. And when companies would reach out to me and I wouldn't be available, I'll kind of refer them to the other person, who would then refer them to the other person. And it would come back and they would call me and say, hey, do you have time for this company? I said, I'm sorry, I already referred them back to you. So it was a really, really small ecosystem, but now it's just growing and growing and growing. And the community is also a great community. Like there's loads of things going on, meetups, voice lunches. Like I think the technology is in a state today where, yes, there is still a lot of progress to be made, but it's also, for me at least, that tipping point now where you have enough professionals thinking about it and giving it the and that it needs to kind of start thinking about the more interesting use cases, to focus more on the user experience and not just building the next thing. So yeah, I think that we're on this tipping point where there's more and more adoption. There's more and more professionals and community that are thinking about the problems and how they can solve them. And the hive mind always works better and moves things forward. So I think we're in a great spot, and I think it will only get better from here.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. As someone that has invested his career deeply, like you have, in this technology, I'm also very optimistic. I think that as we look at the next 5 to 10 years, I'm very excited about where we're headed and what's going to be possible. I think a lot of people think about Alexa and specifically, and they think about voice, right? How do I talk to a computer? And while that is a big part of it, I don't think that that's the only story. I think that there's much more that can be done. And I know I've told some stories about this in other channels, but the idea that it starts to think and react and enable things for you on your behalf without you having to ask. I had a guest on here a few weeks ago that's deep into the smart home world, and he was describing a world where we're not going to have light switches in rooms anymore. And those kinds of things that I think about this stuff all the time, that one blew my mind. Like, yeah, I guess we probably wouldn't need light switches. Our house will just know that we need light. And I'm very excited about that kind of future. At least that's the picture that I like to paint, is this this assistant that's sitting on your shoulder making decisions for you that you don't have to think about. What for you, coming from a slightly different perspective, what does your future look like? I guess there's two questions to that. What are the things that you see that you're looking forward to, and what are the things today that are missing?
Yeah, I find that funny that you say it's like this assistant sitting on your shoulder, and I immediately think of cartoons where you have like this angel and this devil sitting on your shoulder. It's like, so having something sitting on your shoulder goes both ways, right? So there's a good.
As I was saying, it's like, oh man, I don't want people to think about the little devil on the shoulder saying, "Do it, jump off the bridge, do the thing." But I'm sure some people will use that as their visual reference. That's okay.
Yeah, but anyway, that for me, it makes me think about, there is so many things, right, that voice can enable, because it is an enabler. It's an enabler for a lot of things, for not just for accessibility, because that's the thing that comes to mind immediately, right? But there's kind of little moments in your life where you just can't be bothered, and you just want to say something and have it done, right. and you just want to free your mind of screens, and especially when we've been spending loads of time in video conferences. I think just being able to just speak your mind and things get done, I think that is a great enabler. It's that peace of mind that it allows to not be on your phone or your screen. And I think that's the big promise that has always got me very excited about voice, is that it works kind of as something that frees you from screens. And I think that is still true. Although, like, multimodal obviously is very nice as well, and touch forward is very interesting. But I still cling to this idea of voice as an enabler to live freer of screens. And I think you asked me kind of about, and when I think about the other side of things, is there's still some things missing, and some of those things for me is kind of more context-rich conversation experiences, and that's obviously kind of tied to why I'm so invested in OpenDialog, is because of that promise of those context-rich experiences. But conversations are not just a linear path, and I kind of dream of this assistant, perhaps not on my shoulder, but in my everyday life,
right?
That I can actually have kind of a conversation with that in a way that I don't need to model my language and my speaking for it to understand me, but for it to be more natural. And as you say, like a proactive assistant, right? Something I love the idea of ambient computing, and I love the idea of proactive assistants that are able to tailor to your context, to your preference, to the moment you are in, where you are, when you are, and the context of that. And I think that for that to happen, we need to come to a moment in the future where you get kind of true interoperability between different systems.
Yeah.
And that's really, you asked me kind of what does your world look like, and perhaps my world looks like user-aware assistants rather than user-friendly ones.
Right.
And when I say user-aware, I also mean user awareness around the acceptance rate of said user to have that assistant be so proactive and to be so aware of what is going on. So I think user awareness is not only I'm aware of where you are and I'm aware of what you're doing, but it's also I'm aware of how comfortable you are with me knowing that.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And as we think about that context, right, there's two sides to it. It's, does this thing know something about me, whether that's my location or my preferences, whatever that may be. But there's the other side, which I often refer to as the democratization of data, which is the example I always like to use is I don't want to ever have to make a dentist appointment anymore. I want my assistant to handle all of that for me. I just want to know that I have a dentist appointment next Tuesday, and that's the end of it. But in order for it to do that, not only does it have to know my preferences, it also has to be able to talk with my health insurance carrier if they're the ones that allow me or pay for those services. But it also needs to be able to talk to my dentist systems to be able to say, hey, I'm adding an appointment to your schedule. And of course, it needs the permission to be able to grant those kinds of things as well. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces that's missing today, is that there is so much data, so many systems, so many places that data needs to live and be pushed to. And almost none of them are exposed in a way that would allow that kind of interactivity. Every single time we do an integration, it's a brand new thing that we have to build and construct and send data across a wire. And there's no universal, easy way to do that. And certainly in the context like a dentist office, they don't have a team of software developers that are out there building APIs for them and all that, right? They're using a piece of software that they purchased from a vendor, and they're just using it to manage their calendar. So I think that's the thing that's going to slow us down eventually, is being able to contextually integrate with all of the things that I use on a daily basis. My grocery store, my dentist office, my doctor, my children's school, like their teachers, all of that stuff. My goodness, today that's near impossible. And the pandemic has proved that, just how hard it is to keep up with all of the different teachers that your children have and where their assignments are and where they live. Like, just that alone is a full-time job. So being able to do that on a broader scale for all of the things that are going on in my life, that's one of the biggest misses for me, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with your dentist appointment, because to be honest, that's the thing I'd never book for myself, but I definitely have to. And I think there are a few use cases like that where you kind of need to have that routine, or have something reminded to you on a proactive basis. I'm not sure if I'd want I'd want it to actually make the appointment, but that's probably because I'm a calendar control freak. But
right. But that raises a good question. I would love to dive into this because we have time for this. But what would it take for you to be comfortable with that? Like, what would have to exist? What would be possible? Like, it would have to know the times of day that you might be willing to have a dentist appointment. Because even though your calendar's open, doesn't mean you want to do that on next Tuesday. You actually planned on going grocery shopping or going out with your friends or something that isn't really on your calendar, but you have it in your head. So what is it that you would need to make that comfortable for you?
So I don't really know, Jeff, to be honest, because as I said, I'm a calendar control freak and I like to plan out things kind of myself and depending on loads of things. But I think one of the main things is I'm not, well, let's be honest, no offense to dentists in the world, but I know very little people that are excited about going to the dentist.
Not at all.
And so if you leave it up to yourself, you'll probably like wait until your tooth aches to actually go to the dentist, which you shouldn't.
Right.
But I think a reminder of, hey, you should kind of now probably go back to the dentist. I suggest you go on this date. Is that okay for you? And I'd probably ask then, what else do I have going on that day?
Right.
And then Alexa would go, well, you have this and this and this. So that time would be a great time to go and have your appointment. Is that okay to you? And obviously she would have checked with the dentist office that is available time on their end as well. And if I say yes, then by all means. But I still would like to get the option to say, well, no, actually not that day.
Makes sense. I think that's fair. And I think in all systems, the user has to be able to take back control and say, no, I want to do it this way. So I'm in agreement with you with that. There are a lot of things in my life that I would rather offload to someone else. If I had a real human assistant working for me, all the tasks that I would have off of my plate so that I'd be free to do other things. And scheduling dentist appointments would certainly fall into that bucket. So that's a good one. I wanted to ask you one other thing. In your experience, you've worked for agencies and companies. You've spent a lot of time in the voice industry over the past 5 or so years. What is your vision of businesses and like adoption of voice? Do you find that most companies are looking at this as a way to interact with their customers, or what has your experience been there?
So I must say that my experience also kind of depends on the maturity that countries have with the technology. So I've worked with companies in the US, I've worked with companies in France, and it's not always the same story, right? Because Alexa has been around in the US a lot longer than it hasn't been in France, for example. And so maturity also grows kind of from where you started. And in the US, what I see is that they are seeing it more and more as a means to develop actually meaningful use cases. And they understand that as a business, being present and having a meaningful Alexa skill is not only about the dollar that comes after it in the moment, like the in-skill purchase or the voice commerce, which is a big part of it as well. But they also see the fact that having a great experience when the user needs to be interacting with your brand creates that connection, so that next time when they actually need to purchase something, they will think of that brand and they will think of that good experience that they had. And I think that awareness is key. And that is something that I try to talk about a lot with kind of the less mature companies and telling them when they are thinking about priorities, right? Because it's always a question of budget and priorities and what do we do next? And how do we interact with our customers? And is it just a different channel, or do we actually need to integrate it with our systems on a very permanent and kind of meaningful and scalable way? And I always tell them that it's about awareness as much as it is about the dollar that comes right now. Because that's just the way it is. Like even in real life, when you think about purchasing something, when you go to an actual store, you'll always go to the store where you think that people are going to be friendly to you and where you get good customer service. You'll go to the store for which you have seen this very cool advertisement that made you laugh and that triggered an emotion with you several times, rather than the advertisement with a dog staring down a car. If you're not into dogs staring down cars.
Right.
But like, I'd almost say this is a new technology, but there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to human behavior and the way you need to interact with your customers, and searching that added value that you can give them, that user experience that doesn't have the ROI in the moment, okay, but it will in the long run because you're creating a connection. I think as humans, as professionals, be it in a business setting, be it otherwise, creating connections is what makes us tick. And conversations by essence are what create connections.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, I see this all over the place. There are so many, I don't want to call it short-sighted, but I think that there are a lot of places that need a way to draw a line directly from an activity to ROI. We did this thing, we had this sale. We did this thing, we got this many customers, whatever it is. And I often feel like that is a short-sighted view of the world, because you can invest in other ways. I look at my role, honestly, as one of those things. It's very unlikely that anyone that I talk to today is going to go build the next amazing Alexa skill today, right? I'm going to pique their interest. I'm going to build a relationship with them. I get to humanize Amazon a little as I talk with people. And what I find is that as the more people connect with me and people like me and involved in our Slack and other things like that, that they start to realize, like, oh, there's this whole world of stuff that I could really get into. All I was the initial conversation or inspiration or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it might take 3 to 6 months before somebody really builds the cool thing that we're hoping they'll build. And I think I look at it the same way. It would be very easy for us to just be very tactical and say, hey, go out and build stuff, right? And we're only interested in talking to people that are going to build something today. But I appreciate that Amazon has that view of the longer tail of the game, which is we need to inspire people. We need to get them thinking about all of this different technology in the same way that you're describing. It's not about just getting the sale. At the end of the day, that's not going to lead to long-term success. It's short-term. So yeah, I like that. That's a good perspective. I like that.
Yeah, and so like I wouldn't be here today probably if I hadn't seen that Philip Hunter video years ago, right? I mean, it's the little things that create connections, and as you said, it's the little decisions one by one that bring you where you are, and it's also the little decisions that bring customers to your doorstep.
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more. All right. So is there anything else? I know we've kind of rambled around in the world of the future and where things are going. Is there anything else related to the future 5 to 10 years or so that stands out to you?
Yeah. So like, I obviously don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you, like, in 5 years, voice is going to be all over the place, which I think it is. I think ambient computing is just going to move forward. We'll be interacting with voice more and more on a daily basis. But I can tell you what I hope for. So what I hope for is that kind of there is an industry-wide focus on the things that matter most. And that for me is kind of using voice technology for positive impact, with a focus on kind of those user-aware experience that we kind of talked about and touched upon. And then focusing on things like accessibility and inclusion and ethics and user experience, like doing good by doing it good. That's kind of how I would conclude it. And I think as the technology matures and as the community grows, I don't think we really have excuses anymore to not focus on those things that matter. I think now is a good time. And I often make this analogy, right, where I say, if you bake a cake and it's a horrible cake and you put delicious frosting on it, it will still be a horrible cake with delicious frosting.
Yes.
Whereas when you change the recipe and you put delicious ingredients in the cake in the first place, you will get a magnificent cake. And I think with voice technology and user experience, that's really what we need to be doing. Like, we've been through these cycles before. We've had the web, we've had mobile apps, And each time we've gone through this cycle of here's this new technology, let's just build whatever, and then we'll care about the user experience. And I think let's not kind of wait another 5 to 10 years to make meaningful experiences in a meaningful way. And yes, it will not be immediate ROI, but in the long run, as an industry and as a technology, we will be better for it, and it will be profitable for everyone, and we will also feel a lot better about what we've accomplished in that field.
I wholeheartedly agree. I love that. All right, so I'm going to wrap up. We have just one last question here for you, and that question is: how many voice-enabled devices do you have that have power in your home right now? Because I always have to qualify that, because I have 10 devices sitting here behind me that aren't even plugged in. So how many do you have that are actually powered on in your home today?
So a lot. Actually, I say that, but I actually all plugged them out to have this call, because I was afraid that we'd talk about Alexa so many times that she'd go off in all the pieces. But we have so many, but I would say my daughter still doesn't think there are enough. But I must caveat that by saying that obviously I have been in this field ever since she was 5 years old.
Sure.
So she has literally an enormous bias around having voice-enabled devices. But I remember kind of 5 years ago, we bought her a piano for Christmas, because that's what she wanted. An electric piano synthesizer. And she opened up the piano and she looked at it and she went, "Piano, play." And then she looked at me and she said, "Well, it doesn't work." And I was like, "It does work, but you actually need to A, turn it on, B, actually like hit the touches and then sound comes out. That's how a piano works. Like otherwise, yeah." So anyway, she loves doing everything by voice. In the morning, she asks what the weather is going to be like to know what clothes she's going to pick. She puts on music when she has to tidy her room, because that's her least favorite thing to do. So music helps.
Yeah.
And so it's the little things really. So I for one, I have an Echo Show on my desk. It helps me with my kind of day-to-day scheduling routines. It also helps me do the thing, remind me of things that I don't like doing, and that I don't remember doing, like hydrating. So it tells me when to drink my water, and take breaks during the day, because otherwise I'll just get wrapped up in what I'm doing, because I'm very passionate about what I do, and yeah, so they're definitely part of our day-to-day. But as I said, I'm super biased because I love this technology.
Of course. So I didn't hear you actually give a number, though. Do you have a number?
Yeah, to this day, I'm just counting them out loud. I have 7.
7. So that's probably most rooms of your house?
All rooms of my house, except for one. Like.
Very, very good. Well, hey, Maaike, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. This has been an enlightening experience. I got an opportunity to hear kind of your vision. And I think that as we think about voice and the things that you guys are doing with OpenDialog, I think it's an exciting future.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm actually super excited to see the first Alexa skills built on OpenDialog out there in the wild. Like that's my next favorite dream, and that would be my ideal Christmas present.
Oh, that would be lovely. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate your attention. So we will be off next week. We're not doing an Alexa and Friends episode next week. I'm going to take a lovely vacation. But I will be back the week following, and we'll have lots of things going on in our Slack channel and a number of other places. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Maaike, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and have a nice holiday break, Jeff.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.